You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry.
Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I had the opportunity to chat with Chef Mike Traud, the visionary founder behind the Acclaimed Chef Conference, a 4-day culinary extravaganza set to ignite Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from April 12th to the 15th. Get ready to uncover the secrets, inspirations, and innovations driving the culinary world as Chef Mike shares his insights into the keynote discussions, celebrated chefs, and the Trailblazer talks set to captivate audience throughout the event. So grab your aprons and sharpen your knives. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this really special episode of Served Up. Mike, welcome to Served Up. I am so excited to have you on the show today.
It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Can you tell our listeners a bit about your journey into the culinary world?
Yeah, I think my journey's, I'm pretty sure it's a lot different than a lot of people getting into kind of culinary and where I am at now. So I always had like a passion for food. I remember, like growing up and watching cooking shows on PBS and even like taking cooking classes in high school. But it was one of those things that I went on to college. In college, did my demonstration speech and speech class on how to do creme brulee. So the passion for food was always there. And then eventually I followed a family path and went to law school and practiced law for a couple years. But I remember when I was practicing law, like I had this moment of, clarity that said if I never give, this culinary path and that desire a shot, that it would pass me by and it'd be something that I would regret the rest of my life. So after practicing law for a couple of years, I applied to culinary school at Johnson & Wales and, graduated from Johnson & Wales and, came back to Philadelphia and started in the restaurant scene there.
Amazing, amazing. So let's fast forward up to today. What inspired the Chef's Conference and, what do you hope to achieve by the program?
Yeah, so it's an interesting segue from, when I started cooking in Philadelphia restaurants. One of the chefs that I worked with had just graduated from a local culinary program, and he's at Drexel University. He said, he bumped into their then program head who had a hospitality restaurant law textbook, and she said they're looking for somebody to teach restaurant law. And he was like, oh, I cook with an attorney. So next thing you know, I was cooking and adjuncting and teaching a course here and there. And after doing that for 3 or 4 years, a full-time position opened up at Drexel. And what I could see from my time in the industry, but also in the time in education, is that there was kind of a gap between industry and education. And there was, an ability to implement programming that could kind of connect both sides, to get chefs back into culinary school, connecting with students, but also getting students kind of familiar with chefs, but kind of on their own home field advantage. So they're a little more comfortable. So at that point, I started the Philly Chef Conference, which, initially ran in 2013. And then I ran that for 10 years, only missing 1 year for COVID. I got right under the belt before everything shut down, late February, 2020. And, recently Drexel has decided to move on from their hospitality management program, which then presented the opportunity for me to kind of just, again, seizing another opportunity like I did going to culinary school to kind of branch off and create my own conference. So this will be the first version of the Chef Conference.
Well, that's amazing. It really is. And you must have such a passion for it, or why else would you do it? right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like a lot of my close friends are still in the industry. So I hear a lot from them, what's needed. But I also like in planning it each year, I feel like I take on that mentality of that line cook, 10, 15 years ago where I was, and who would that person like to meet? Who would they like to engage with? How would, and then it's formatting like what are the key topics and agenda. So it's really trying to elevate the community through education, but also kind of present these opportunities for people to kind of connect and network in a small environment, which, trickles out to the whole restaurant community in general.
Yeah, that's incredible. Can you tell us about some of the keynote discussions that you have planned for this year's conference?
Yeah, this year I have two keynotes. First one's going to be on equality in the bar industry. So, lucky enough to have Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewery moderate. And then I have Tia Barrett, Kaylee Hammonds, Becky Paskin, Gary Solomon Jr., and Jermaine Stone, all talking about the role of equality in the beverage industry, their separate programs that they're doing, and really trying to highlight the diversity, behind the bar and beverage movement. And then the ending keynote is going to be on parenthood in the restaurant industry. And we're lucky enough to have an all-star panel behind that one as well, with Stephanie Wu, who's editor-in-chief at Eater, moderating, and then having Katie Button, Gail Simmons, Sybil St. Aud Tate, all these people, presenting their vision of what's going on and how we really need to address, the life of a parent working in a restaurant kitchen, especially from a female perspective.
Man, you just dove right into the tough topics. Seriously,
Yeah,
we've had Garrett here on Served Up, with his program with the Michael J. Jackson Foundation and all the good work that he's doing for the Black community to raise awareness in distilling and in, the whole brewery umbrella, which is amazing. So for you to really to put it all out there, and then parenting, I mean, how long will these discussions go? Because with both of those, you could spend 3 days on each. Oh my gosh.
I think that's also the beauty of those conversations can go on forever. So like I generally slot them for an hour, but say like an hour panel. I really like these conversations to be not just a conversation between the panel, but a conversation between the whole audience. So I like to open up, Q&A, because I think that's why we come to conferences. We want to engage, otherwise you could just watch it online if you can't ask a question. It's one of those things where I want people to engage and ask questions and be involved. But I think there's a beauty to having these conversations are never ending. And that's, I think, the point that they can be discussed there, but each of these keynotes leads into, lunch or our dessert break. So the conversations continue. And I think that's the point of, any good conference is that, they tackle tough, poignant issues in the industry, and the conversations continue outside of the whole forum.
Yeah. My hat's off to you for really diving in on both of those topics. They're definitely needed to be pushed to the forefront within the hospitality sector, period. Amen. So. And
it's, it says a lot because the individuals that participate, I think, realize that too. So for them to, donate their time to participate, it shows how much they're passionate behind these issues and how much they really want to kind of discuss it and have these conversations out in the open with everybody involved.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love what you're doing. How do you select, the chefs that are participating, the panelists? You have a whole set of trailblazers as well for the conference. What criteria are you considering when you put this together?
It's one of those things that it's a never ending planning process. I really don't think there's a day that I don't think of something or jot something down. Even like I could be, sitting on a beach and I read an article or I see somebody post about something and it's like starts going with ideas. So it's, really kind of discussing with so many different people. Like there's not like this formalized committee. My committee is kind of everybody who's involved. My committee is the community around me, where it's like having conversations and saying like, well, who do you want to see speak? What topics are important to you? talking to leading journalists and saying like, hey, what do you see out there that needs to be discussed? So it's like I can craft ideas, but it's also getting this consistent feedback from everybody involved to really, highlight it. Like, for example, the Parenthood, panel this year was just having a talk with a female chef in Philadelphia. And she said, you know what, I'd love to see a panel on parenthood. These are some of the people. And it's getting that feedback from the right people and saying, okay, let's see if we can make this happen. So it's a whole kind of community effort. I just kind of get to condense it and, reach out to individuals. And lucky enough that a lot of these people continue to agree and come back on a yearly basis.
Yeah, it's really cool. What other themes and topics will you be covering over the course of the 4 days, correct?
Yeah. So, we're starting off on Friday with an expert day, because I think there's a lot that goes into developing a restaurant that is more than just menu planning that needs to really be highlighted. So that day is a short condensed day from 9 to 12 where, the first panel is talking about the behind the scenes individuals who, create restaurants and what, really needs to go into it. So that first panel will have a lawyer, a finance person, restaurant design, real estate. Because I think those are things that don't get highlighted and younger chefs really don't think as much as they should about getting into this stuff. So really kind of having a focus on that and then following it up with a panel on menu development, which I'm lucky enough to have Ariel Johnson, who's formerly of Noma, coming in from her new book on taste, and as well as Thomas Friebel, who's currently the culinary director for Noma Projects, and Rosio Sanchez, all talking about what goes into kind of planning a menu. And a lot of these times, especially with the programming on a Friday, I like to have these programming in the morning because it's more accessible to industry people. So a 9 to 12, 9 to 11 programming allows a restaurant industry person to come in, see this, and then go prep and be ready for service. So a lot of the timing is based on that. And then that leads to Saturday, which I was lucky enough to get Alain Ducasse, legendary French chef, to come and do a conversation in this new book before it gets released on the 16th. So he'll do a book talk and a signing. My opening night on Sunday, April 14th, we'll have 2 panels. One of them, based on sobriety in the restaurant industry, which will be moderated by Andrew Zimmer, featuring Ashley Christensen, Sean Brock, Gregory Gourdet, and Michael Solomonov, talking about one facet of the restaurant industry that has a lot of focus on wellness. And then the second panel will be a fireside chat between Jeff Gordonier and Phil Rosenthal, talking about food tourism and the value that restaurants and the restaurant industry plays to economies and travel. Because I think nowadays people, will book reservations before they book plane tickets.
100%.
Yeah. And then Mondays, I like to refer to as my circus, where it's all day, 9 to 5, 3 different rooms running concurrently, choose your own adventure. And that's when the fun really begins.
Wow. I mean, it's so packed in and condensed, but it sounds like there's really like something for everyone, right?
Yeah.
With all of the topics that you're covering.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, like, I think the best feedback is when people tell me, like, I couldn't decide what panel to go to.
Yeah, that's terrific.
That's a good problem to have versus, but it's also interesting where it's like you try to figure out which panel fits which room in different sizes. And each year you can always, guess wrong that which one is going to be the most engaging. So, I haven't batted 100%, in any of this stuff. It's like sometimes the smallest room gets the biggest crowd, and it's just surprised that that's what, the people were interested in.
Can you highlight like any unique features or experiences that you personally are really looking forward to experiencing over the course of the conference?
Well, this year's, the first time that I was able to really kind of expand it and grow it. So, being able to have Ducasse is an amazing situation to be involved in. But for the first time, we're doing a lot of collaboration dinners as part of the conference and working with Resi and getting, national and international chefs to Philadelphia. So one of the dinners being Sarah Ciccolini from a restaurant, Santo Plato in Rome, doing a 3-day residency with Amanda Schulman, who is a Food and Wine Best New Chef this year at Her Place Supper Club. So to have, these dining experiences that don't truly exist elsewhere, and to bring these chefs in to really make it, consumer focused and engaging with the community as well.
That's really, really great. Where can our listeners find more information about yourself and the conference?
Yes, it's all posted on thechefconference.com. So a pretty succinct, URL to find. And it will have, lists of speakers, the agendas and the tickets, but also bio and information about, the conference in general.
So I would love to know a little bit more about you, Mike.
Yeah.
And I would love to know, because you've been in the industry for a while, what changes have you seen in hospitality and culinary since when you started to today? And where do you think that it's going?
I think there's an increased kind of professionalism around industry. And I think there's a focus more on the health and wellness of the industry and making sure that it's, sustainable moving into the next generation. I think the days of, chefs not taking care of themselves from a mental and a physical proponent. Because I remember back when I worked, putting in crazy hours and body breaking down. And I don't see that as much anymore. I think nowadays it's finding not so much a complete balance, but a healthier balance towards, making sure that your own physical health and well-being, your sustainability in the industry is highlighted. And I think chefs, are recognizing this, and they're nurturing it, and they're trying to really grow that next wave of chefs to, take over in the next generation.
Yeah, it's so funny because, I've been in the hospitality industry now for 30 years, so for a long time. And I can tell you, back in the day, and even up until recently, it was like a badge of honor, right? To wear that grind. You're just grinding it out every day. And it was a badge of honor. Who needs days off? Who needs sleep? Who needs food? Right? And
it was completely, it's like you worked and you worked and you worked, and maybe you got a day off, but there were those times where you're like, oh yeah, I worked 14 days in a row.
Right. Right.
You basically sleep at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a benefit to, putting in hours and learning, but it's also when it starts, affecting your health and wellness and your well-being, that, that's a huge problem, because that's going to eventually lead to, you could have whatever passion you have, but if your body's not supporting it, and it's going to break you down and shut you down before you could even, get back into the restaurant.
I'm really keen to know more too about, and it kind of goes along with this, is that the Chef Conference has a panel with Andrew Zimmerman about, that kind of non-alcoholic life, right? That spirit-free life. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's something that should be highlighted and discussed. And, these are 4 chefs that have had their, moments in realizing that they have to succeed in life, they have to be, sober. And it's addressing it in a healthy fashion. It's not necessary for all individuals, but it is for certain individuals. And I think it's, recognizing it and appreciating people's individual differences. And I know with the individuals on the panel, they all have a different journey, and I think it's important to show that this lifestyle, doesn't have to be about drinking. It doesn't have to, there's people who are successful, and recognizing it. And I think recognizing it between when people see these elite individuals in the industry, it becomes more acceptable, and say like, okay, I get it. That's fine. This is the path you chose. I'm not going to force you into drinking with me after the shift. And, recognizing each of their stories, and, highlighting that, sobriety is part of the industry, 0 proof cocktails. These are all things that are not going away, and need to be discussed openly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's really wonderful that you put together that panel and just really continuing that good health journey and showing that's like, okay, right? You don't have to hide it. You can, and now cocktail menus really do, a lot of them have that no and low option, where maybe
Yeah.
10 years ago they didn't.
And there's so many startup brands that are really entering the market, focus on those flavors and those developments. But I think it's healthy for, people in the industry to hear these stories. And maybe, there's one person in the audience that it clicks with and they say like, you know what, I can, make this change too. Maybe they recognize, that they may have an issue with alcohol or some drugs. And could be a moment where they can listen to somebody and it can kind of connect. Because I think a lot of times these conversations are held behind, closed doors. And I think it's to advertise that, this is healthy and this is who I am. And hopefully others, can recognize it and make the change or even just appreciate it.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Do you have any advice for those listening that are either curious about entering the hospitality culinary space or are currently in the culinary hospitality space and are really looking for that long-term career?
I think it's important to really do your research on the restaurant, the chef that you're looking to grow with and learn, and to spend a good amount of time, but not to spend too much time with the one chef. I think a lot is learning with a chef for a year or two and then experiencing another kitchen and getting a different point of view and having that own personal growth, to open up your mindset, see different things. Because at a later stage, when you want to go off in your own direction, you're going to have a much bigger perspective. And it's also, taking advantage of opportunities, taking risks in your career. Maybe it's traveling, maybe it's, finding the right chef to work with. But I believe it all, pays out at the end.
Yeah, I think if you do the work, it's amazing, what can manifest when you put that work in, right?
Yeah, opportunities present itself and, you just have to be ready to take it. I know, for me, I wanted to work for this one chef in Philadelphia, and this was back in the day where you'd send letters to different kitchens and hopefully get a response. And after multiple letters, I got a response. He was opening up his second restaurant. There happened to be, a cheap flight from when I was living in Charlotte to my hometown in Allentown, which is an hour north of Philadelphia. So I said, oh, well, I'll fly up for the interview. What's the risk? And eventually it led to a job and spent 4 years within that organization in 2 different restaurants. But if I wasn't willing to take that risk, who knows what would have happened.
Can you paint a picture of the Philadelphia's culinary scene? Because I think for a lot of our listeners may only, know Philadelphia from either like the Liberty Bell or Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. Can you really give us, a really good, maybe peek behind the scenes of what's happening today in culinary?
Yeah, Philadelphia really had an amazing year last year with the James Beard Awards. So we had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which won Outstanding Restaurant. Knock from Kalaya, which won Outstanding Chef Mid-Atlantic. Ellen Yin, who won Outstanding Restaurateur. I mean, this past year, Amanda Schulman, who was, Food and Wine Best New Chef. So there's a lot going on, and Philadelphia is really kind of expanding and exploring into different neighborhoods and different types of cuisine. So we can have the elevated fine dining is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we could also have amazing tacos from somebody like Christina Martinez in South Philly Barbacoa. So there's a lot of different cuisines out there to explore in a lot of different neighborhoods. So yes, the cheesesteak, it's a must. I think to stop and have a cheesesteak and experience it. But there's also so much going on in food in Philadelphia that is really finally shining and making its place, nationally on these James Beard Awards, New York Times, Food and Wine. It's really being highlighted.
Yeah, it's really an exciting time for your city. Really exciting time. I live right outside of Chicago. I can tell you for years and years and years, we're known for pizza, hot dogs, and roast beef. Period. Amen. Not a culinary town. Now we're a culinary town. So it's really fun to see that grow and that vibe. And I think it really brings in new folks to your city. Food can be a destination for sure.
Yeah, food tourism is a real thing. And, if you mentioned with Chicago and pizza, Philly cheesesteak, it's like that kind of becomes like the gateway into exploring the food in different areas. And once you're here, there's, other items. But I think it's, we need to focus on the value of food and restaurants and food tourism to the economies of these areas where people are traveling to these different conferences or family trips and basing it off of a restaurant reservation. Before I book this, I need to, in Philadelphia, I need to book my dinner at Zahav. And once I lock that down, then I can worry about the hotels and then I can worry about this. So it really kind of stimulates the economy. And so much is based on, where we eat, what we watch on TV, what pictures we take on our phone. It's all food. And it's not just, people from the restaurant industry who do this. It's people in every profession, every walk of life who have, a stake and a focus in this industry.
Yeah, boy, you are certainly right with that. Would you care to do a lightning round with me?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Favorite dish to cook at home?
You know what? I trained in Korea, so I do like a Korean stir fry every week. And I make a big batch and I eat it throughout the week.
Oh, that's a good one. Most memorable culinary experience?
You know what? I think probably the first time I dined at Noma.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which, was, this was back before it went to separate menus in 2016, I think. But yeah, it was, a different vision of food and my first time in Copenhagen.
Oh, amazing. Best piece of advice you received early on in your culinary career?
I don't know if it's the best. I think it's the worst piece of advice, but it was the best piece of advice where a chef said, if your staff doesn't hate you by the end of the day, you didn't do your job.
Which God.
Which I think it's the total opposite. Like they shouldn't hate you.
Yeah.
But hearing that perspective, was like, no, that's wrong. And that mentality, I think, is something that's an old school mentality within the culinary industry and has faded away.
Yeah, hopefully. What ingredient can't you live without?
You know what? It's something as simple as salt and vinegar and the proper seasoning. Because if you go out and eat, those I think are the major elements that can be missing from a dish that really kind of can transform it if done properly in the right hands.
Yeah. Favorite kitchen gadget?
You know what? I'm so basic from just doing pasta and bread. So like my life was working with my hands, but even just a good spoon when you're cooking to be able to flip things over and saute and cook properly.
There we go.
And a good saute pan. Everybody should have one at home. Okay.
What do you think was the worst food trend over the past decade?
Not of the worst trend, but in the wrong hands, modernist cuisine. I think for a time, everybody thought they were a scientist and a lot weren't properly trained and kind of made it come and kind of disappear because it was exploited in the wrong hands.
Oh, that's so interesting. And then what's your go-to comfort food?
My go-to comfort food, just like something simple, is like good bacon and eggs and toast, like a simple diner breakfast will make me happy in the morning.
Yeah, me too. Share that. You can't beat a BLT. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just something simple where it's like, it doesn't require thought. It doesn't require, some analysis behind it. It's just like a taste of, childhood and, memories of simplicity before, going out to high-end dinings and being overcritical.
Yeah. Where you don't have to think a lot, right?
Exactly. It's like, it's simple. Just, okay, this is the food. It's good.
Yep. Very cool. So can you give one more time where our listeners can find the Chef Conference?
Yeah, you can find all the information at thechefconference.com, and we'll have the list of speakers, the agenda, the tickets, all the links and all the information for, what's going to be a great 4 days in Philadelphia of kind of food events, live podcasts, dining opportunities, and really the way the format is set up, it's not in a large scale auditorium. It's in smaller, intimate environments where you actually get to engage and connect and ask questions to all these speakers.
That's amazing. I want to wish you, Mike, just an amazing conference, so much success that you just can't even take it. I'm so excited for you. I think what you're doing is groundbreaking, and the fact that you're bringing in these really important topics, amazing talent, and you're giving people accessibility, right, to all to learn. So it's pretty awesome. So congratulations.
Thank you. Hopefully this is the first of many chef conferences to come.
I think it will be. I really do. So with that, I just, from the Served Up family, I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. Thank you so much for coming on Served Up.
No, thank you for letting me talk about the chef conference.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!